In his latest interview, host Tucker Carlson sat down with Telegram founder Pavel Durov to discuss social media, tech companies, and Elon Musk. Let's listen.
When the Russian government asked Pavel Durov to use his social media company to censor its political opponents, he refused. He said he would rather resign and leave the country where he was born than participate in something like that. Such was his commitment to free speech. Now, you got to compare that, what he did, what Pavel Durov did, to what Mark Zuckerberg did, or Parag Agrawal, the guy who ran Twitter before Elon Musk bought it. Both of them have collaborated with governments to censor people, and that's shameful.
The encrypted messaging app Telegram has reached more than 900 million active users. Now, Pavel Durov said in this interview with Tucker that the United States government wanted a so-called backdoor into Telegram to potentially spy on its users. Let's listen.
We get too much attention from the FBI, the security agencies, wherever we came to the US. So to give you an example, last time I was in the US, I brought an engineer that is working for Telegram, and there was an attempt to secretly hire my engineer behind my back by cybersecurity officers or agents, wherever they are called.
The U.S. government tried to hire your engineer?
That's my understanding. That's what he told me.
To write code for them or to break into Telegram?
They were curious to learn which open source libraries are integrated to the Telegram's app, on the client side, and they were trying to persuade him to use certain open source tools that he would then integrate into the Telegram's code that, in my understanding, would serve as backdoors.
Would allow the U.S. government to spy on people.
So I thought this was a very interesting interview, and Pavel Durov, the founder of Telegram, is an interesting person. So he is someone who left Russia because the Russian government put pressure on him to give information about Ukrainian figures, that kind of thing. And now he's warning that, and it was very preliminary conversations, it sounds like, but that FBI agents, here's what he's saying, reached out to people who work for him, and he thinks we're most curious about potentially designing some kind of backdoor into Telegram. So Telegram is end-to-end encrypted. When you send a message over it, there's no way for the government or the company, frankly, to track the origins of that. So I think this is interesting because social media companies are moving in this direction. They've heard as consumers, our concerns about privacy, that they can snoop, they can read what we are saying, that if there's some crime or national security threat, the government can subpoena them to get that information. And the social media companies don't like that. So Facebook wants to move to end-to-end encryption for Messenger. Snapchat is ostensibly already end-to-end encrypted, although me and others have had some questions about how end-to-end encrypted it is. The question is the government going to simply let that happen, or is it going to go, wait a minute, we want to still be able to, read these messages if we think it's national security or something like that?
Yeah, I agree with all of that, except for that I don't think it's consumer anguish that's driving these decisions. I think that these businesses are doing what businesses do always, which is look out for their own interests, and their interest not to be embroiled in these battles over whether or not they should or should not have reported on their users, given that sometimes they're being asked to report on their users who have solicited abortion pills in a state where conservatives have made abortion illegal, right? But in which most of the country thinks shouldn't have happened and would get backlash on a company like Facebook. So for whatever the reason, I think that you're right, that companies are moving in this direction to protect themselves, frankly, against getting caught in those kind of values-based dramas over whether they should help the cops in one instance or another instance. And I think that's substantively a good thing. Why do you think there was such a positive reaction, given that all of the social media companies, regardless of how they're coded, liberal or conservative, a positive reaction to this interview in particular?
Well, I think he's a very interesting person, very knowledgeable, and is not, this is not a Tucker obviously does a lot of interviews with very right-wing people. This is a figure who I think has credibility as some, now that the right is seen as being, and particularly the Tucker faction of the right is seen as being kind of like pro-Putin or pro-Russia. This is someone I don't think you can credibly make that accusation, although on his platform I'm sure there are pro-Russian people using it to discuss. I mean, there's bad people obviously on the platform that use it. I remember Telegram got a lot of pushback from having terrorists on the platform, and then of course January 6th has been a big conversation about Telegram. Well, I remember reading some report about how criminals, terrorists, to the extent when the crackdowns are worse on platforms like Facebook, they're actually more likely to go to Telegram where to have their conversation. So it's like, just like I was saying, the feds want all of the conversations between criminals taking place like in public on Facebook, where they can easily get that information. So they don't exactly have the same motivations. But I think it'll be interesting to see the extent to which end-to-end encryption becomes the total norm, and whether the government is going to do anything to try to prevent that, because they have such an interest in being allowed. People, the law enforcement people, the senators. You remember that ridiculous tech hearing from a couple weeks ago where they just screamed at Mark Zuckerberg and the Twitch founder and others about the abuse and manipulation of some children on the platforms. It's like, well, this is a handful of incidents that the platforms take steps to prevent, but there is going to be more ability to get away with malicious behavior, abusive behavior when it is end-to-end encrypted, but it will also be much more difficult and hopefully impossible for the federal government to do the kind of interventions that have so irritated people on many sides, common people on many sides of the political spectrum.
Yeah, it was interesting. At one point in the interview, Tucker asked Pavel about other apps that are good on censorship and pointed to Twitter as an example, saying Elon buying Twitter sort of ends your monopoly on anti-censorship, but do you still greet it cheerfully? Are you in favor of it? Do you feel competitive now that Elon Musk is in the kind of anti-censorship game, or are you happy about it? He responded that he's happy about it, that he loves that Elon bought Twitter. But it, to me, raised some questions about what are they actually talking about. One of the biggest categories of censorship that we're seeing right now is, of course, against pro-Palestinian voices. Elon Musk came back from a trip from Israel, obviously saying that if you use the phrase "from the river to the sea, Palestine will be free," that constitutes violence, terrorism, I forget the exact verbiage, and that could warrant your censorship. He has gotten a lot of flack for acquiescing to censorship demands in India from Modi, not just censoring political opponents within India, but around the globe. There have been arguments that the reason that he's behaving so differently toward India versus Brazil is because he is manufacturing Teslas in India and has a personal incentive to roll over on censorship there to maintain a healthy relationship for his business. So is this really about free speech, or are these individuals making kind of arguments that are in their business interests, the same way that, frankly, end-to-end encryption, as I argued before, is in their business interest? Yeah,
I mean, Telegram has a commitment to free speech that goes well beyond anything we're talking about on the mainstream social media sites. Now, it's a business part of it. It's for business reasons, but its business model is one that gives you that kind of atmosphere. Yeah, I mean, we talk about this a lot, but I think Elon's commitment to free speech on X has been mixed at best. I think the partial transparency he brought to how the site was being operated previously was certainly a good thing, and I'm glad for it. I think his policies that he has put onto the platform are very hit or miss, including the should X person be allowed back onto X? Let's run a poll. Makes absolutely no sense to me. The looking into it kind of approach. Well, you're the CEO, you're the person in charge, the owner. You can't be called upon to do that. Some of the inconsistencies that you pointed out, I agree, are inconsistencies, and he should be allowed that kind of speech. Now, he has faced he's faced pressure from activist groups, including the Anti-Defamation League, to change some of those policies with respect to Palestinian speech, and probably the Israeli government. Now, you and I just don't agree on the...
To be clear, the ADL is pushing him to do exactly the kind of censorship that he is doing.
Right.
Okay.
Well, they threatened his threatened his advertisers. They told his advertisers to stop working with the company.
He's listening to the ADL.
So yes.
He has an adversary relationship with them, but is also on the same side with them when it comes to Gaza.
He has folded on several times. Now, in terms of the authoritarian or semi-authoritarian governments putting pressure on him, I think you and I just disagree on that. I don't think it's his fault if India says, do this, or you can't operate here, or Brazil says it, or Turkey says it, or China says it. That is a fault of the government doing it. I don't.
Right.
How the CEO responds in that, and if they say, well, in this case we're going to do it, but in this case we're going to not. It is a business decision.
I think that's a fair argument if you say, I'm making business decisions here. But if you're saying I'm a free speech icon and heralding your behavior in one country as an exemplar of your character on this issue, while asking us not to pay attention to you completely rolling over in a different country, I guess what I'm saying is that the Telegram CEO, I think, should not concede so readily to Tucker Carlson's argument that there are two free speech heroes in the game. I think from my perspective, it seems like there's still only the one, and his name is not Elon Musk.
All right, that does it for us today. Tomorrow on Rising, we will hand off the baton to the Fridays team. Brianna and I will be back next week.
Be sure to like, share, and subscribe so you never miss any content. For those of you who prefer to listen while you're on the go, we're now available anywhere you listen to podcasts.
Bye-bye.
Take care.